the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Mozambique. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and this is a continuation of Series 20 on the 2023 African Cup played in 2024. We have done a full and short version of the groups and teams, and we're now looking at the players of each team, this episode covering Mozambique's players. So we're doing this media cast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. And part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. We think that'll be in early January. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we compiled today and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover a few other things that I'll talk about at the end of this media cast. Mozambique is one of the teams that did not reach the 2021 African Cup, so we did not do a media cast on their players yet. Therefore, we'll be doing a full version of their players here, unlike the updated version that we're doing for teams that were a part of the previous Cup. Before we begin, we'll make a couple of brief notes on what Soccer Files is doing. So we have made a separate video on what we'll be covering over the next 9 months. And actually what we've done over the past few months as well. So YouTube watchers can see the link to that on the screen, and it can also be found in the show notes for both watchers and listeners. In short, though, we have just completed our series on the groups and teams and players, or part one of the players, for the 2023 Asian Cup, and we're now focused on the 2023 African Cup, both of these taking place in early 2024. So we have done the teams and groups for the 2023 African Cup, and so we're currently focused on the players, or part one of the players podcasts, which we're doing here. And we've also started coverage of World Cup 2026 qualifying. Okay, so this episode, I'm just going to get rid of something in the graphics here. This episode will have 3 sections. So section 1 is short, just some general information on the team. Section 2 is the main parts, where we look at the candidates and their likelihood of making the squad. And section 3, any closing thoughts we have and a preview of part 2 of the media cast. All right, let's begin then. And we'll start with some general information on the squad. So Mozambique last took part in the African Cup in 2010. That was the last time they qualified. And we only have 3 players that remain from that squad. So we'll point that out there as we go along in section 2. The other thing we want to cover here is recent games. So Mozambique has played 29 games over the past 2 years. And we'll take a quick look at those, but we are only going to count 19. But I'll talk about that as we go. So they had... well, 2022 started with friendlies, so 2 friendlies in March and 1 friendly in May. We won't even name the teams there. Next was African Cup qualifying. So for this African Nations Cup, they started their qualifying here with 2 games in June of 2022 against Rwanda and Benin. Shortly after that, they had the COSAFA Nations Cup. Now we don't count these games partly because some of the top players don't play in the tournament. Actually, for Mozambique, a surprising number of the senior team do play in the competition. However, some of them don't, so we didn't count it. And also, we didn't have reliable enough information for the players in that game. The same is actually true of the African Nations Championship qualification. The African Nations Championship is a tournament only played by members who are playing in Africa. So players have to be African-based to participate in this tournament, and a lot of them aren't. So we left out these games. Those were 4 games from July to September 2022. That followed with a couple of friendlies in November, or just a 1 friendly in November 2022, and then the actual African Nations Championship. Now, we did include these games because we had the information, but I kind of regret it because, again, some of the top players don't participate in that tournament. So you may see that the top players, excuse me, are missing the 4 games there in January 2023 for the African Nations Championship. In March of 2023, qualifying continued with the 2nd and 3rd games. The 3rd and 4th games for qualification for this tournament. That was home and away against Senegal there. They also had 1 friendly in June and the 5th of 6 African Nations Cup qualification games in June also. So that was against Rwanda. They had another COSAFA Cup. That tournament is often every year in July, but we didn't count those results. And finally, African Nations Cup qualifying came to a close with the final game against Benin there. So that was 6 games in all, and we're talking about the last one in September 2023 there. And they had 2 friendlies in October, and then World Cup qualifying began in November. So that was against Botswana and Algeria there, the last 2 games in November. So especially games like that we consider reliable because we think they're starting the lineup that we might see in the Cup. So there we go. In all, 29 games, but we are only counted 19 of those games. So when we talk about player participation over the past 2 years, we'll be talking about 19 games. Okay, and in terms of formation, we looked at the formation, especially for the major games, and we found that their usual formation is 4-2-3-1. So that's 2 central defenders and a right back and a left back as the defense, 2 kind of defensive midfielders, 3 attacking midfielders, and 1 forward. They did experiment in between that. They kind of put out that lineup and experimented a bit, but always came back to the 4-2-3-1. They did a 4-3-3 2 times, and otherwise they were different formations. Only once did they try out a back 3. So they had a 3-2-2-2-1 formation. That's kind of a variation of a 4-3-4. And that's it. But again, as we're going through the positions, think in terms of a 4-2-3-1, and that's the best way to imagine it. Okay, that is all the information we want to give on the team before jumping into the main part, which is the candidates. So we begin with the manager. So the manager has actually been the same since before the African Cup in 2021, or in January 2022. Chikino Conde took over in October of 2021. So he's been there for a few years now. And Chikino Conde is a bit of a star in Mozambique football. He was part of the national team from 1986 to 2001 with 43 caps and 12 goals. And he actually led them through a good period where they reached the African Cup in 1996 and 1998. So he played for some of the bigger clubs in Portugal there, most notably Sporting Lisbon, but he had 3 stints with Vitória Setúbal and other teams like Belenenses and Portimonense. He also had a brief stint in the USA with a couple of teams in 1997, and then retired in 2005 and went into management, mostly managing teams in Mozambique, until he became the manager of the under-23 Vitória Setúbal team in Portugal. and that was from 2018 to 20, and he became manager of Mozambique in 2021. So Chiquino Conde leading them through this tournament, and we will consider him a definite candidate as far as that goes. Okay, let's go to the goalkeepers, and we'll begin just by listing the candidates. Almost all of these players' names will be in grey, which indicates they haven't been through a tournament. And we begin with a definite candidate, Ivane Urubal. He's not a starter, but we'll talk about that shortly. Actually, the starter is our likely candidate, Hernan, and we also have a likely candidate in Fazito. And then we have one possible candidate in Victor Guambe. And one possible but unlikely character, we'll just give the name but won't go into detail on him. That's Gian Chande, Swiss-born Gian Chande, who has not been selected for the last 7 games. So we'll focus our attention on the more likely ones, beginning with Ivane Urubal. So as I mentioned, not really a starter. He did start 5 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, but he was on the bench for 9, so more of the backup goalkeeper here, not selected for 3 matches. Most of these players play in Mozambique, so I'll only point out the ones who didn't, and Mozambique's biggest squads are probably Costa del Sol and Black Bulls, and there are actually quite a few, maybe 4 or 5 other squads at a similar level. Anyway, let's go back to Ivane Urubal. So probably not the starter, as I said. It'd be our likely candidate, Hernan, who's the starter. He's been with the team since 2021 and has 26 caps and is 25 years old. So Hernan has started 8 of their 19 games and was not selected for the 11 others, but those were mostly in the middle of the period. So he started 4 of the 5 games, both at the beginning and at the end, and that's why we think of him as the starter. Next player is Fazito. Fazito is new to the team since 2023. He's just 20 years old, and he got his first appearance on the bench in January of 2023. He did actually start 2 of the remaining 13 games there and was on the bench for 8. So we consider him a likely candidate. And then we have Victor Guambe, actually the most experienced of the bunch. He's been with the team since 2017 and has 16 caps, even though he's just 25 years old. And but he was mostly the starter in the COSAFA Cup there, and he was not on the bench. Not selected for 7 matches, including the last 4 matches. So it looks like he was more of a candidate in the past than he is now. Okay, let's finish the goalkeeper section by summarizing basically the position. They all start some games, as we have seen, but Hernani starting 4 of the last 5 games particularly makes us think that he is the starting keeper. And but it wouldn't be surprising to see a couple of the others there get in there. So we're quite confident about him starting, even though he's started even less than half of their games. Okay, let's move on to defenders and central defenders. We have no definite candidates, but we have a likely candidate in Martinho and in Mexer, and also Nene. So 3 likely candidates here. And then we have 4 possible candidates. David Malambana, a possible candidate. Chamboko, Zainadine Jr., and Francisco Chico Muchanga. All 4 possible candidates. And then 1 possible but unlikely in McCamey. who we will just mention by name and not go into detail on. Let's go back and look at these candidates then, beginning with the likely candidate, Martino. So he's been with the team since 2021 and has 30 caps. That's pretty good. He's just 24 years old. And he has started 10 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, as well as subbing in for 5. However, he was not selected for the last 5 matches, which normally would cause us to move him down a notch. But we think it's perhaps not that serious, given how much he plays for the team. So we still consider him a likely candidate. Next, we have Mexer. He is one of the 3 players who were part of the squad in the African Cup 2010. He started and finished games 1 and 2 there, but didn't appear in game 3. And so he's been with the team even quite a while before that, since 2007, and has 59 caps and 3 goals. So Mexer is really one of their veterans. He's 35 years old, and he's playing in Turkey now, but he has played for bigger teams, Bordeaux in France and Rennes in France, as well as Sporting Lisbon in Portugal, part of his resume there. So Mexer also a likely candidate here. Nene is our 3rd likely candidate. He's been with the team since 2017 with 26 caps and 1 goal, and he's 27 years old. He only started 4 of their 19 games over the past 2 years. He was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 5. So just 5 of the 19 matches that he was not selected for, and he has been called up for the last 7 matches, so even participating a bit more recently. So Nene, our 3rd likely candidate there. We also have David Malemba. He has been... he was absent from the team for 20 months and returned in June of 2023 and started 3 of their remaining 5 games. And he was also on the bench for 2. It looks like he may be coming into the picture a bit more here. Next, the possible candidate is Chamboko. He is new to the team, first appearing in September 2023, and far less likely. He didn't start any games. He was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2 there. Zenedine Jr. Is also a veteran with the team. He is one of the other players who played in the African Cup in 2010, but he didn't see any action in that tournament, on the roster and on the bench, but not on the field. He has been with the team then since 2008 with 64 caps and 1 goal. And like Mexer, he's 35 years old. He plays for Maritimo in Portugal, which is a pretty good club affiliation. And he was in China also in 2016 and 17. So he only started 3 of the 19 games, and he wasn't selected for 15 others, including the last 7 matches. But we wouldn't be surprised if he was called in kind of for his veteran experience to the squad. And finally, we have Francisco Chico Muchanga, also a veteran with the team. Wasn't part of the 2010 African Cup, but has been with the team since 2011 with 41 caps. And he's actually still just 33 years old, so not too old. He returned after an absence to start 6 of their remaining 14 games, and he was on the bench for 3. However, Muchanga was not selected for the last 5 matches. So again, they may call him in for his veteran because he's a veteran, but they already have 2 veterans in central defense here. So maybe they have enough coming in. Okay, so that is the central defense. We'll just repeat 3 likely candidates: Martino, Mexer, and Nene, and 4 possible candidates: Malemba, Chamboko, Zenedine Jr., and Muchanga. there, and one possible but unlikely candidate in Makemi. Okay, let's move on to left backs then, and we have two likely candidates in Edmilson Dove and Bruno Langa, and one possible candidate in Danilo Moos. A lot of these players actually do go by their first name, so I believe Danilo Moos goes by Danilo, and we'll probably see that with a bunch of other players. We also have a player who seems to be off the squad, and but we're going to put him as possible but unlikely, Reynaldo Mandava, and I'll tell you why when we get to that. Let's look at the candidates though. Actually, this is left back, so I've put them in the wrong place on the graphic. I'll just move them over, and we begin with Edmilson Dove. No, actually, I think I'll begin with the possible but unlikely candidate, Reynaldo Mandava. So he has been with the team since 2013 with 35 caps and 2 goals, just 29 years old. And he plays for Atletico Madrid in Spain, a pretty impressive resume. Also played for Lille in France. And he last appeared for the national team in June 2022, when he kind of abruptly stopped playing for the national team, having started 10 of their previous 11 matches prior to that. So again, given his club affiliation and whatever the reason was for that abrupt start, it wouldn't be surprising to see him come back for the tournament. Anyway, we'll continue on with the players who have been playing recently. So Edmilson Dove, the likely candidate, with Mozambique since 2015, with 39 caps and no goals. He is 29 years old and plays for Kaizer Chiefs in South Africa. He started 7 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, and was not selected for 7 of the matches. Also, he's also been on the bench and subbed in. So Edmilson Dove, a likely candidate. Bruno Langa has been with the team since 2016, 18 caps and 1 goal for the 26-year-old, and he plays for Chaves in Portugal. And he was loaned to Vitória Setúbal in 2019 and 20. That's actually where the manager was also during that period, so probably interacted with the manager there. Over the past 2 years, Langa has started 6, including the last 5 matches, so 6 of their 19 games, and subbed in for 3, on the bench for 2, and not selected for 7, as well as being injured for 1. So Bruno Langa, especially the recent history there, starting the last 5, giving him a boost for his chances. Danilo Moos, on the other hand, was replaced by Bruno Langa, it seems, because he was not selected for the last 5 matches. Danilo has been with Mozambique since 2017 with 32 caps. He's 26 years old. He plays in Mozambique. He started 4 of the 19 games over the period, but was not selected for 12. So that includes, as I said, the last 5 matches. So kind of going down in the ranking there. So that's what we have. 4 candidates as left back. They'll probably bring 2 of them, and it'll be interesting to see whether Reynaldo Mandava makes a comeback into the squad there. Okay, moving over to the right back, we have 3 candidates. We have a definite candidate in Domingos Mancanza, and 2 possible candidates in Bu Januario and Nanani. So Domingos Mancanda, our definite candidate, has been with the team well since 2018, because he did play an African Nations Championship game back then. But his first cap for the senior team was in November 2022. and he started 10 of their remaining 14 games, as well as subbing in for 1 and being on the bench for 2. So he's consistently called up since that time. And I should point out that some of our numbers won't add up here. For example, he has 17 caps and 0 goals after I've just described his first 11 caps. But if they don't add up, it may be because some of the players have played in African Nations Championships games, or they're credited for games in the COSAFA Cups. Again, some sources credit those games and some don't. So don't worry too much if the numbers don't add up exactly. Generally, we focus on the senior team, though. So as far as that goes, his participation has been quite recent. So we consider him a definite candidate. He has started most of their games since November 2022. Next, we have Bo Januero. He's been with the team since 2016 and is 30 years old. Just 13 caps, though, in that time, and started just 1 of their 19 games there, but has been absent for the last 5 matches. So not that likely. And we should probably move Nanini ahead of him on the list. I'll do that. Because he seems a bit more likely than Januario. He's been with the team, this is Nanani now, since 2018 with 22 caps, and he's 27 years old. He started 4 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 5. And not selected for 9 matches. So Nanani, a stronger candidate, I would say, than Januario. But again, they'll probably bring 2 of these players, although sometimes it could be an out-of-position player, which I'm going to tell you about, so perhaps not 2 of these ones. It was Nanani and the left winger Clesio Bok, who we'll meet soon, mostly sharing the role in 2022. But from November of that year, when Makanza first joined the team, he's increasingly made it his position. So actually, I'm not so sure that Nanani is a strong candidate here, since most of his play was before Makanza arrived. I'm actually kind of predicting Makanza with the backup being Clesio Bok here. Okay, let us go to the midfield. We'll begin with the defensive midfielders. And in fact, all of the central midfielders are labeled as defensive midfielders. We have none coded as central midfielders here. We have 2 candidates who are at the definite level. So that's Amadou and Shaquille. And then 1 at the likely level, Guima. And 3 candidates at the possible level, Manuel Kambala and Quito. He goes by the name of Quito, but his actual name is Sadan Gwambe. And we have Keynes Abdallah also at the possible level. And I'll just throw in possible but unlikely candidate Ali Abudo. Oh, sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble there with the graphics. Ali Abudo, he's new to the squad. He was selected for 2 games in June, and then not selected for the last 5. So it looks like they just kind of brought him in, tried him out, and discarded him. Let's go back to the more likely candidates then, with the definite candidate Amadou. Amadou has been with the team since 2018 and has 20 caps. He's 27 years old, and he started 14 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3. So just 1 match that he wasn't called up for. So he looks a definite candidate here. And Shaquille, the other definite candidate, has been with the team since 2021, but has amassed 36 caps in that time. He's 26 years old, and he started 9 of their 19 games, subbed in for 4 and was on the bench for 2. So just 2 matches that he wasn't selected for. So seems less of a starter than Amadou, but has started about half of their games. Shaquille, and both of those players play in Mozambique. Guima is our likely candidate here. He's been with the team since September 2023, and he actually started all 5 of their remaining games there. So new to the squad, but making a strong bid as a starter. He is playing for Chavez in Portugal, and he also played in Poland before that for quite a while. No, I won't say, because I think I wrote the wrong information there. Anyway, in Poland before that, and that is Guima, the defensive midfielder, but he does actually play as a right winger sometimes. So some of his starts were as a right winger. So we may mention him again when we get there. Down to the possible candidates, we have Manuel Kambala, and he has been with the team since 2017 with 38 caps and plays in South Africa. He started 7 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, but he wasn't selected for the last 5 matches. So we consider him a possible candidate. Again, perhaps his experience will be useful for the team and maybe bumps up his likelihood a little bit. Speaking of experience, we come to Quito, or Sadan Gwambe, who has been with the team since 2003. And he is playing in Mozambique. In fact, he played in Mozambique for his whole career. And he returned after a 15-month absence in June 2022 and started 2 of their remaining 16 games. He was on the bench for 4, though, and hasn't been with the team that much, actually not selected for the last 9 matches. But he is still around. And again, they may bring him due to experience, but he's 35 years old, so not actually older than some of the other veterans on this squad. That is Quito. The other possible candidate is Keynes Abdallah, and he has no caps for the team. He's just 20 years old, but he got his first appearance on the bench in November 2022, and was on the bench only for 2 matches, but one of them was recent. So it's just the last 2 matches that he wasn't selected for. So a slight chance for Keynes Abdallah, and he plays for Chavez B in Portugal there. All right, those are the defensive midfielders, but they're also the midfielders. I put them in the wrong kind of column again, so I'm just going to move them here. Those are all the candidates that we have. So we're thinking the starters there would probably be maybe a rotation among Amadou, Shaquille, and Guima. Guima again coming in to start the last 5 games there. So looks like a good candidate. Okay, let's go to left wingers, all the way up to left wingers. We'll just make a quick comment. As I said, no players coded as central midfielders. We see fewer and fewer players nowadays coded as left midfielders or right midfielders. And given the 4-2-3-1 formation, there it'll generally be the defensive midfielders playing the 2, and then attacking midfielders playing the role upfield, the 3 in the 4-2-3-1. So no players coded as left or right midfielders, and the position not really used. So let's go to left wingers, and we begin with a likely candidate in Plessio Bog, who we've mentioned as filling in as right back, it seems, for a while, until Domingos Macanza arrived. We also have a possible candidate in Witty, but actually my feeling is he is also a likely candidate. But let's talk about him and see if we're going to change that. So Clesio Borg has been with the team since 2011. He's 29 years old with 36 caps and 8 goals, and currently or recently moved to Honka in Finland. Kind of an interesting choice of club, but he was with Maritimo in Portugal before that. He's always been a bit of a traveler. He's played in Azerbaijan and in Turkey and Greece, and also played for Benfica in Portugal from 2015 to 16. He has started 6 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, Clesio Borg, and subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. So there were 8 matches that he wasn't selected for, but we still think he is a likely candidate here. Next we have Witty, and though he's coded as a left winger, he really plays all over the front line. Witty has been with the team since 2015. He has 35 caps and 3 goals and is 27 years old, and he plays for Nacional in Portugal. He started 8 of their 19 games. Again, not actually that many of them as a left winger, although he's coded that way. Started 8, subbed in for 1, and not selected for 10 matches, including the last 2 matches. But we still think he has a good chance of making the squad, to be honest, because he's quite versatile. So Witty plays for Nacional in Portugal. I'm not sure if I said that. Anyway, those are our 2 candidates, coded as left wingers at least, but both of them often playing out of position. Clesio Borg and the possible candidate who we really think is likely, but Witty. Right wingers, they have more candidates, but again, these players kind of move around a lot. So for right wingers, we have Gildo Vilanculos. He goes by a couple of names. I've seen Gildo. I haven't seen Vilanculos that much. I've also seen Lourenco, which is his middle name. So you may see him listed under any of those names. I'll call him Gildo because I think that's what the announcers are going to call him in the Cup. Gildo has been with the team since 2015 with 32 caps and 3 goals. He is 28 years old, and he plays for Covila in Portugal. That's one of the smaller clubs, but he did play for Maritimo in Portugal from 2017 to 20. And he has started 8 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 5 and not selected for 6. But all of those 6 matches that he missed were in the first half of the period. So Gildo has been called up consistently in 2023. Next we have Tolino. Oh, I was supposed to name the candidates first, so I'll go back and do that. In addition to Gildo as a definite candidate, we have Tolino as a definite. We have Jenny Catamo as a likely candidate. And then we have 4 possible candidates in Nelson Divrason, Luis Miquissone, Jonathan Miomo, and Dario. All of those players coded as right wingers. So you can see with that overload, they do move around. Okay, so sorry, we have covered the first definite candidate, Gildo, or Gildo Lourenco Vilanculos. So let's move on to the second one, and that is Tolino. So Tolino has been with the team since 2011 and has 60 caps and 4 goals. He also is 35 years old, and he started 6 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, as well as subbing in for 5 and being on the bench for 7. So just one match that he was not selected for there. However, Telino is more of a substitute, as we see, just starting 6 of the games, so coming in as a sub. Next, we have Jenny Catamo. Catamo has been with Mozambique since 2019, 21 caps and 5 goals, which is pretty impressive because he's just 22 years old. And he also has good club affiliations with Sporting Lisbon since 2021. And he's also played for Maritino and Victoria Guimarães in Portugal there too. So he started 8 of their 19 games over the past 2 years and was on the bench. He was out with 2 separate injuries for 7 matches, and that includes the last 2 matches. So we'll have to update in part 2 to see if he's available. Again, a very versatile player playing. I've seen him in central midfield and even as a forward there, and just 3 matches that he was not selected for, and even those matches may have been connected with his injury. So they'll certainly be hoping to get Catamo back for the Cup. Okay, let's look at our possible candidates then. Nelson Divrasone. Sorry, I'll start that again. Nelson Divrasone, been with the team since 2015 with 25 caps and 3 goals. And he's 29 years old, playing in Mozambique. And he actually returned from a 3.5-year absence in November 2022 and started 4 of their remaining 14 games. So a possible candidate in Nelson Divrasone. Next is Luis Miquissone, and he plays in Tanzania, interestingly. He was also with Al Ahly, a big club in Egypt. And he's been with Mozambique since 2015 with 48 caps and 9 goals. He's 28 years old. And he started the first 2 of their 19 games over the past 2 years. He was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1, injured for 3, and not selected for 12 others, including the last 7 matches. So we think his club affiliation, Simba, is actually one of the bigger teams in Africa. So we think his club affiliations maybe make him a bit more possible than his participation would indicate. Okay, let's go to the third candidate, Jonathan Muomo. And he was born in Germany, actually, and plays in Germany with Carl Zeiss Jena. And he's been he's new to the team since September 2023. So Muomo didn't start any of their games, but was subbed in for the last 3 matches and on the bench for 1 and not selected for 1 other. So 5 games since he arrived and subbing in for 3 of them. Jonathan Muomo. And finally, we have Dario, a possible candidate also, and he got his first cap in November 2022 and only started 1 of their remaining 14 games, but was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 5. So that leaves 5 matches that he wasn't selected for, including the last 2 matches. So they have a lot of candidates here, so it's pretty competitive. Dario then, 27 years old, and has 13 caps in all, some of them in the African Nations Championship or the COSAFA Cup. Okay, and we're almost finished the midfield, but we do have 1 general midfielder who we will add to the list, and that is at the possible level. General midfielder basically means they haven't played enough games or haven't started enough games to really know what their position is. So I have one of my sources showing him as an attacking midfielder and another as a defensive midfielder. And I'm talking about João Bonde. And he's been with the team since 2023 with 3 caps. So he started He came in January 2023, started one of their remaining 13 games and subbed in for 2, and was on the bench for 3 others. So called up for 6 of the matches and not selected for 7 of them. So a possible candidate in Zhao Bonde. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't put his name on the list. There it is. We move on to the forwards, and we include attacking midfielders in the forward line there. And I'm sorry, I just realized I forgot to kind of summarize the last 2 positions. So I have to go back to left wingers, and the candidates there were the likely candidate Clesio Bork and the possible candidate Whitty. And for the left wingers, the positions being quite unstable, actually mostly out of position players playing on the left wing. And Clesio and Whitty, the candidates here, do start quite a few games, but only sometimes as left wingers, both of them playing in other positions as well. So here we have some of the right wingers that we met, actually, because we got ahead of ourselves. So Mikwisone, Katimo, and Gildo have each played more than once as left winger. However, in the last 2 games, it has been Clesio playing in the position. Clesio Bork. Again, sometimes these players go by their first names, which is a bit of a Portuguese custom. Okay, on the right wing, it's really not a clear picture here either, despite the greater number of candidates that we have. Tolino was starting near the beginning of the 2-year period that we're looking at, but he's become more of a substitute recently. Katimo might well have been the starter, but his 2 injuries have kind of interfered with that, even causing concern as to whether Katimo will make it to the Cup. It was left winger Whitty actually coming over to replace him during the first injury, and then Gildo has been there recently, and as we mentioned, the defensive midfielder Guima has also appeared there twice in recent times. So left wingers and right wingers kind of difficult to pin down starters for those positions, and the players move around quite a bit. Okay, now we are ready to go on to attacking midfielders and the forward line. So let's begin with our likely candidate, Dominguez Palembe. I usually see him listed as Dominguez more often than Palembe. And we also have a possible but unlikely candidate in Yude. Yude is his name, Y-U-D-E. But he has not appeared for the last 9 matches, so we won't talk about him that much. So we're focused on Dominguez Palembe here, or Dominguez. He's been with the team since 2004 and is the 3rd of our players who played in the 2010 African Cup. So he started and finished all 3 games there. He got a yellow card that I thought was a fair tackle in the tournament. I don't know why I'm going into that level of detail, but Dominguez plays for the Mamelodi Sundowns in South Africa, and he's played in South Africa actually since 2007. Yes, I think I haven't mentioned his actual stats. So been with the team since 2004 with 106 caps and 16 goals. And he is now 40 years old, but is still going strong. He started 10 of the 19 games over the past 2 years, as well as subbing in for 2 and not selected for the other 7 matches. So despite his age, we consider him a likely candidate. And he also, as we've seen with other players, plays in a variety of positions. When they do have a formation, like the 4-2-3-1 that has an attacking midfield role, he plays in that position, but they often have formations that don't have that attacking midfielder role. So we see him popping up in various places as a central midfielder, a center forward, or I've even seen him as a central defender. So a very versatile player, Domingos Palembe. Okay, we do have a player coded as a secondary striker, but he's at the possible but unlikely level, and that is Melvin Choi. He's 22 years old, but was not selected for the last 9 matches, so we won't talk about him much. Maybe in part 2, if he is named to the final squad, we'll add a few details. But we're going to move on to forwards here, and we have a definite candidate in Stanley Ratifo, and a couple of possible candidates, 4 of them actually, but Faisal Bangal, our first one, is under an injury concern. We have Isaac Carvalho, Melke or Melka, and Lau King, all of those possible candidates. And we have one possible but unlikely, Antonio Dale. I'm just checking. He started one of their 19 games, was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2, but not selected for 15 matches, including the last 2. So he has actually played recently, but we're going to leave him at the possible but unlikely level here. Okay, let's go back and look at these candidates. So Stanley Ratifo has been with the team since 2017. He has 26 caps and 4 goals and is 28 years old. And he was born in Germany and has played all of his club soccer in Germany with fairly small clubs. He's with one called Pforzheim in Germany since 2018, but he was with FC Cologne, or at least FC Cologne's B team, prior to that for a couple of years. But generally small clubs in Germany. For Mozambique, he's started 8 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2. And there were 5 matches that he wasn't selected for, but they were all near the beginning of the period in 2022. So he's been quite consistently starting lately, so not only selected but starting. So we consider Stanley Ratifo a definite candidate. Faisal Bangal, our first of 4 possible candidates, has been with the team since 2014, but only has 8 caps and 2 goals in that time. And in fact, he returned after a 2.5-year absence in September 2023 and started one of their remaining 5 games and was subbed in for 1. But then he was injured for the last one, so he's currently under kind of an injury doubt, which we'll have to update in part 2. He plays for Luparense. That's a fairly small team in Italy since 2023, and was with Alcyon, again, not a big club in Italy prior to that. Isaac Carvalho has been with the team since 2010, 48 caps and 6 goals for the 34-year-old. He's since, he's played in Mozambique for his whole career. He also was absent from the team. He returned after 2 years in November 2022 and started 4 of their 14 games and was subbed in for 3. However, Carvalho was not selected for the last 4 matches. For the last 7 matches, so doesn't actually look that likely. Melke has been with the team since 2021, but has 28 caps and 4 goals in that time, so he's been used quite a bit. He's 26 years old. He started 5 of their 19 games over the past 2 years and was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 4. But not selected for the last 4 matches. Nevertheless, I'm going to put him above Carvalho because he seems a more likely candidate than Carvalho there. And finally, we have Lau King, and he's been with the team since 2020. 19 caps and 3 goals for the 28-year-old, and he started just 1 of their 19 games over the past 2 years, but was subbed in for 6. but he wasn't selected for 12 others. I do think, though, that Lau King has played more recently than either Melky or Carvalho. So I would say kind of an equal level, or possibly a higher level of possibility than them. But we'll leave him where he is for now, and we'll see how things play out when the final squad is selected. Okay, that brings us to the end of the player overview, and we're not going to do a spotlight review of starters for this group. And that's partly because for a lot of positions, especially in the forward line, it's really difficult to pin down. They all shift around a lot. They've been in and out of the team, and we'll really have to wait until the final selection and the first game of the Cup to see who is playing where. Anyway, that is part of our business for part 2. So we'll go over the list here and tell you which ones did and didn't make the squad. We'll talk about any kind of surprises, players who we thought would be selected and weren't, or players who we thought wouldn't be selected but were. And we have seen in this podcast that we will need to update on a couple of injuries. I think the most significant one there to Katamo, to see if he will be fit for the Cup. Anyway, that brings us to the end of part 1, and we hope you join us for part 2. We originally planned to tag on our past, present, and future plans for the mediacast, but we have instead decided to put a link to that 10-minute video in the show notes. It covers what we're working on and what we plan to do over the next 9 months. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.